Good morning, Anthony Franco. Do you know old Chester Carlson? You remember Chester, don't you? Oh, Chester. That old rapscallion.
There's a lot of things that I should not say right now.
There's old Chester. In 1939, Chester Carlson pitched his invention, the zero graphy. Zero graphy. He took it over 20 companies and was rejected every time. Despite the world's resounding no, he pressed on. His grit led to the invention of Xerox and the creation of an entire industry. This episode, we're digging in to the power of grit and how founders can harness it for success. Anthony, why do we care? What does grit matter to us as founders? We shouldn't really care about grit, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Episode over, everybody. Thank you. It's been great to see you. Good night.
Well, I mean, Chris, this is almost. It's so said over and over again that it is almost a stereotype or a trope that entrepreneurial grit is the thing that gets you through, and it's almost so obvious that it's hard to describe why it matters. So I'm so close to it that it's like, well, you should have grit because it's hard, and if you don't have grit, you won't do the hard thing. Therefore, you will fail.
So I'll rephrase the question. I am a young, intrepid sales manager at a big Fortune 500 company, thinking about quitting his job to go start his first company. Other than don't do it, which is the best advice, by the way. Which, other than don't do it, why do I care? Like, what is the reason that like you need to have grit? It's like, no, I've got a good business plan. I'm good. I'm talented. Why does this even matter?
You know this, Chris, and you essentially you're going to tell people, and they're not going to believe you, that it's really freaking hard. My favorite phrase around this is, you can tell somebody how cold the pool is, but they're not going to know until they jump in.
This is the proverbial middle school lunchroom where you'd be like, oh, that smells. And your buddy's like, ooh, let me smell. Why do we do that? Like, do we want? No, it's just we have to find out for ourselves, right?
Yeah. So the truth is and grit isn't necessarily, it's not just about working hard. It's about the ability to maintain passion and perseverance over the long haul, even when everything in the world is telling you should quit. Perseverance is about getting through the hard stuff. Grit is about getting through the hard stuff when everything is telling you to quit.
I think it's well said.
It's often the difference between pushing through the plateaus or just giving up when it gets hard.
So, all right, if we agree, and we do, that grit becomes one of those core factors that you need to be a successful entrepreneur, here's the real heart of the debate. I was born tough, Anthony. I was a cowboy. I don't know if you knew that about me. I learned how, I was tough from the day I was born. I don't need to develop grit, right? Like, that is an innate trait in me. It's not something that can be developed over time, right? Or is it something you can learn and develop as a founder?
When people describe us, Chris, I'll include myself.
When you say good looking, is it good hair?
Worse, do you think discipline is the first thing people think of?
No. Probably not. No. I mean, yeah.
So, so grit isn't discipline. Um, what is it? So what? I'm still trying to get to that core. Like, what is grit, and can you develop it as? What do you think? Can you? First of all, I'd love to hear your definition of it, and then is it something you're born with, or can you develop it like you can develop any skill?
I love the word because it does. There's a great connotation to the word grit. It even sounds kind of sounds kind of tough, doesn't
Gritty.
it? Yeah, it's just a level of toughness. You're dead right. There's a concept of perseverance. And perseverance is incredibly important, but grit is something different. Grit is perseverance is just continuing down the path in the face of challenges, etc. But grit acknowledges that there's emotional pain. There's emotional challenges. There's physical challenges sometimes. You've had to do it where you've gone to work and you're sick and you feel like crap and you've had to get on sales calls. It is can be physically difficult sometimes as well. I mean, you particularly when you're building a physical product, I'm sure that you were sweaty and gritty. Forgive the pun.
I
In a
clean
lot
my
of days.
fingernails afterwards. Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
exactly. So grit acknowledges that there's something deeper than perseverance, and that there is challenges that are deeper than just surface level. Well, it's stressful. Let's keep going. And so, to me, grit is synonymous with the word resilience. And so, resilience and grit are these two things that are kind of common in my mind, at least. And it is the ability to not just show up, but to be emotionally present, to come back from a very difficult place, even when you're sad, when you're lonely, when you're tired, when you're exhausted, and just continue to be a positive, good person that your company needs you to be. Does that resonate with you or no?
Yeah, so I think you're really on the right track here, and to get into you know grit, discipline, perseverance, and resilience, they're all related. Um, Perseverance is something I think you're born with. Grit is something that you can develop, and it's like it is a muscle um, that you can force yourself to do the uncomfortable thing and get used to doing that thing, that hard thing, that thing that you don't want to do, and that hard thing becomes easier as you know. Bruce Lee said, "Do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one." And I feel that really, I mean, Bruce Lee wasn't born a martial arts master. He developed it. He developed it with grit.
I love the fact this is the very first Bruce Lee reference we've ever had, which is kind of shocking that it's taken this long because those of us of a particular age, like Bruce Lee's kind of badass. I mean,
Do we need to
how many?
describe who Bruce Lee is? I don't think we do.
I mean,
He's
I don't.
still
I, don't
culturally relevant today,
I
right?
think so. How many Bruce Lee movies have you watched in your life?
Oh, uh, I don't even 12.
Yeah, I've probably watched more than 10 as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is great. Okay, so let's get so we believe now that maybe perseverance, maybe this concept of discipline, these can be more innate qualities, but grit and resilience is something that can be developed. It can be built over time. So let's first talk about like when you need grit. Now I know that we'll say every day, but in your life, in your story, what were some of the times when you really needed to show up with grit and perseverance? And what did that look like and feel like in your experience?
Um, this is uh, this is an easy answer. This is an easy question and a very difficult question at the same time. So I'm struggling to answer it with the right tack because you're right. Grit is something that you need to have every day. You need to get up and go. I don't want to go. I don't want to go have this hard conversation. I want to go do that thing. That I don't want to. I don't want to do my financial review, my monthly financial review today. I don't want to send these emails out. That's the kind of grit that essentially everybody, that's not unique to entrepreneurism. It's unique to anybody with discipline. Um, Grit is, it's overcoming. Look, there are many times in any startup where I feel like we're not going to make it, or that I'm doing the wrong thing, or I'm focusing on the wrong idea, or like, what, I just need to go get a regular job, right? It happens a lot. And grit is ignoring that feeling and reminding yourself of why you're doing it and what difference you're trying to make, and getting to that emotional core of your mission, your vision, and your values, on what's making you do this completely impractical. It's like, the best analogy I can have is, you jump in a pool, another pool analogy, ironically, and you hold your breath for as long as you can. At some point, your body starts to fight you and forces you to jump up out of the pool. But no matter what, you still have another 30 seconds in you. You can convince yourself that you got another 30 seconds, and then you go through that 30 seconds. I got another 15. Now, there's at some point you're gonna die, so you need to take a breath. But that extra umph, and what usually helps you with that is to understand, why am I holding my breath for so long? To fight the physical urge to get out of the thing that you're doing. That's a very generic answer, but I don't know how to answer it specifically.
Well, I mean, I think that the reality is that I have, almost every founder that has been doing this for a while has at least one or two or three or five valley of death stories, right? So the valley of death, we kind of talk and laugh about it, but it's a real thing, which is the valley of death is that stage where a startup will succeed or fail. And if you can come out of that valley of death, it's an emotional valley. It is a business valley. It's like, am I doing the right business? It's a lot of the times when we choose to persevere or to pivot. But as we come out of that valley of death, that's kind of the moment. It's the moment of whether or not you want to do that. And one of the challenges here, Anthony, is that we often say to founders, like, hey, dude, I would quit. I wouldn't persevere at this point. There's not a lot here that I see that you can pull out of it. At the end of it, it's always that founder's decision, though, right?
Yeah, it's totally the founder's decision, and this gets into this, like, when does grit? Well, first before I get into that, there's this grit, there's micro grits.
We're coining an entire category of grit today. Grits. This is amazing.
I like to eat them with eggs.
Shrimp, they're delicious.
Shrimp and grits, I love them. There's grit for the overall venture that you're doing, and then there's grit in the tactics that you're using, or the strategies that you're using to make that, to realize that thing comes to life. And there is, I'd love, Chris, I'm struggling to come up with practical examples, but you come up with a tag. Let's say, for example, you come up with a tagline. How much grit do you need to have to make sure to force that tagline out? Because there's a certain just repetitiveness before a messaging framework actually resonates. And then there's at a point where it's just not working, and you need to pivot the messaging. And I would call that having grit in a strategy, not in the venture. And how do you differentiate between this is the company and where I'm headed versus this is the tactic that I'm using to forward my goals?
It's a great question, and I think it really becomes the heart of this episode, which is, Okay, so we know, to set it up and to recap, we know that grit is incredibly important for founders. So a couple of stats to throw at you, Anthony. In that valley of death, gritty individuals, 33% more likely to make it through the valley of death in any startup. 92% of founders who describe themselves as gritty report higher resilience when dealing with rejection, setbacks. My favorite one, study shows that grit is more reliable than IQ in the
Mm.
corollary of success for founders. It's a study by Angela Duckworth. So we know it's important, but there's also this weird tension there, which is the persevere pivot in that valley of death. We need to be smart about how we figure out whether or not we should be gritty or whether or not we should be listening to the universe telling us this ain't the idea. That's a difficult and nuanced decision. So let's talk about how. Like, first, let's talk about how do we think about developing grit if we believe that it can be developed. What are the things that you think you can do? Like, how do we start to think about this, Anthony?
Uh, I think this comes with gears. So I don't think somebody right out of college that doesn't have any entrepreneurial experience can has enough of a track record to trust their intuition on grit, on whether or not they stick with it or not. Um, in I'm not talking about age. I'm just talking about the ability to have gone through enough to know when you should just quit or you should keep on persevering. And there is a point though where you failed enough where your intuition doesn't serve you anymore either. Where it's like I should just quit now because
So basically, if you're not an experienced founder, sorry, you're out of luck. Like, that's
no,
just, you know.
I think you need to have grit, intuition by proxy, by going out and talking to as many people as you can, and pushing the idea and your vision and values and what you're trying to do on top into everybody, and not listen to them telling you no, because you're gonna get. I mean, you're gonna get them. Everybody's gonna tell you not to do it because it's a crazy idea, or because entrepreneurship is hard. But those conversations will maybe help you navigate where the idea, you can push through on the idea, and where you maybe need to rethink it. So experience, there's nothing better than experience to help you do that. Um, but you can um, into it just by having lots of conversations. Do you agree with that, or is there another tactic that you can think of?
Well, I think you've stumbled on. I think it is that first concept of how you develop grit, and I think you said it earlier in the episode, which is always go back to your why. Now, the it's almost a cliche at this point, but it's so accurate that it's worth repeating. Which is founders should fall in love with problems, not their individual solutions for problems.
It's a great
Inevitably,
point. Yeah, grit on the problem.
inevitably,
Yeah.
your solution will need to change and evolve. You might start as a product and end up as a service. You might start as a service and end up with a product. If you start a product, inevitably, whatever product you think you're going to build is not going to be the product that ends up solving that problem. So, really falling in love and making sure that you are dedicated to solving that problem. And this gets into the very, very foundations of deciding to become an entrepreneur and deciding what company to start is, are you willing to dedicate 5, 10, 15 years of your life to solving one very difficult problem? And you and I, Anthony, we know founders that have done that, that have spent their entire careers on one really gnarly, tough, difficult issue and are completely happy. Now, they'll pivot, they'll change their solution, but they're not backing off trying to solve what that problem is, and they still love trying to solve that problem.
So
Fair
give me some
or good point?
practical exercises to build grit, Chris. Give me something. Give me some practical things that you can do as a founder to develop grit every day.
Well, so you have talked about some of them. So let's start with the foundation. The foundation there is understanding your why and writing it down. And this goes deeper than just saying I'm falling in love with the problem. You and I would argue maybe it's because of some sort of trauma or, something in our past, but there's a reason why each of us became a founder. There's a reason why we decided to do this job.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, antisocial. I mean, narcissism. I don't know. I mean, you could say, but reflecting on that purpose of why you chose to go down this journey in the face, like founders aren't dumb. We all know that 80% of companies fail, right? We know that. And yet we've chosen to do this anyway. So really reflecting on that. What is it about this journey that really calls to you? Anthony, what is that for you? What is that core purpose about why you have chosen this path?
I think it's really interesting to think about maybe the contrary. The times where I struggle with grit is when I don't have a purpose. I, Maybe we should talk about that a little bit. Like when you don't have a reason to get up in the morning, when you aren't chasing a problem or a purpose, um, it's really easy to get lazy.
Right. I always love the ones, and we came up in a world where every second company was another photo sharing company. Like Photo
Yep.
Bucket in Denver, they were super early, and then there was Flickr, and there's these other companies, and then every single business plan was like, "We're just gonna make it easy to share your photos." It's like, what fucking problem are you solving? Really? That's gonna be the thing that you get so motivated, so excited about
Mhm.
that you really want to do this job? Like that to me is a really core question. Yeah, I mean, there are times when you've seen companies that have just cash grab stuff, but even you can argue all the social media giants they were trying to solve a connectivity problem.
Zuckerberg was just trying to pick up chicks.
I know you were. I set you up for that as a layup. I think, but that's a problem. That's at least a big problem for him.
Hey, procreation is one of the life force 8. It
That's
is a
right.
reason to get up in the morning.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
all right, we know that we need to have this core purpose. We know we need to fall in love with the problem. We know that, and to your point, I'm the same way. When I'm not really excited about solving a problem that I feel needs to be solved in the world, it's hard for me to be as motivated about getting up and charging after those problems.
yep.
So, yeah, I think the second piece, Anthony, is you got to have a plan. You have to have goals. You have to have a direction. If you don't have some sort of a plan, you can feel listless. You can feel like you're wandering around and floating through the universe. Is that
Yeah,
fair? Is that a
I
good
think that's
point?
right. So I think when you're struggling, so looking for practical exercises, right? One of the things that I probably should have known this earlier is just walk away from your computer. Walk away from your office. Literally go on a walk. Completely disconnect with solving a problem and try to figure out, why am I doing, like, what is the thing that I could get passionate about? What is my purpose here? What is my purpose now? What am I called to do? And really focus on that instead, and don't solve anything. Don't try to figure out what you're going to do next. Figure out the why. And that doesn't sound practical. It sounds like Zen, or something Confucius would say. But in reality, it is fundamental for you to develop grit. And then once you have that why, what's the what's the thing I least want to do, and go do that first. And then what's the next thing I least want to do, and then go do that. And constantly have a list of things that you need to accomplish, and pick the 3 that are the hardest, and then go do those 3 things. And eventually doing the hard things is going to help you develop grit.
I'm going to steal your word. Something you just intuited something you
Intuitive.
understand intuitively, is also backed by research. It's called cognitive reframing. And so the idea between cognitive reframing is looking at a problem and you're seeing it from this perspective, is can you reframe that problem in a way that makes you more excited about that? Can you change the perspective? A lot of time for founders, that's a zoom out. Like just pan, right? Stop looking at the problem like this. Go back to that original purpose. Go back to the, hey, we're here for 100 years on this planet. You know, if you're lucky, at the end, nobody's going to remember this company anyway. It's like it's not truly life or death unless you're, like a surgeon or something. In which case, it is life or death. But so cognitive reframing is a really, really important skill you can develop. There's lots of information about it if you just Google it. But yeah, you are right on path. So what's your next piece of advice, Anthony?
Um, I I think those are the two most important. Like, I don't have a third. I like to think in threes, but the first is know your why. The second is do the next hardest thing. Um,
The
that's it.
there
Like,
are there are other skills that, so
yeah.
the
I'm
reason
curious
why,
what you have.
well, and it's funny because I teach a lecture in my business school class. Why are you laughing, Anthony? Yeah. No, I teach a lecture on
Seeing
stress and
you
burnout.
lecturing is kind of funny to me. I don't know
I mean,
why.
I do it.
Paint the
I just
picture.
lecture to you all the time. People just have to listen when I lecture in business
For
school.
some reason, I picture you with a top hat and a monocle doing it. I don't know
uh,
why.
at some point, you know what I should do is let you, connect you with my students and just be like, yeah, just have a therapy group of people that have to
Have a
hear me all the
therapy
time.
group.
Yeah.
Sorry, you get
So,
lectured from Mr. Peanut.
oh God, no, I'm gonna have to just maybe I can get like one of those cartoons, Mr. Peanut things, and that'll just be my new talking avatar for him. So cognitive reframing is a huge piece of it. The second thing is taking, and you mentioned it, it's a mindful pause. And a mindful pause is taking a walk. It's taking a moment and resetting and just taking some deep breaths. This is when you said it's Zen, there is now tons of research based on the power of mindfulness. The easiest is just box breathing. The Navy SEALs do this to lower their blood pressure in battle. This is not something that is just now contemplative religious practice. It is something that has really, truly been studied. Box breathing, you take a in breath for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, out breath for 4 counts, and hold that for 4 counts. That simple act in a moment of stress has been proven to lower your stress, pull you out of that amygdala takeover, which is that fight or flight moment, and help you make better decisions. You mentioned going for a walk. What are some of the things that you do in those really stressful moments to just calm yourself and try to make better decisions?
It is certainly so I find when I'm stressed out, I go try to solve the problem first. Like, I get into and this I frustrate the hell out of my wife, right? Because she's telling me a problem that she's having, and I'm like, all right, here's what you can do. It's like, just shut the hell up. You need to do that. You can't do that with your wife, and you can't do that with yourself.
Right.
Shut up and listen to the problem internally, and then go, all right, so what do I need to do? What do you need to do? What can I be helpful with for myself to help me work through this? Um, so meditate, walks, wherever you can go get quiet time, go do that. Or listen to the How to Founder podcast.
Yeah, I
And
mean, which is true. I mean, it's a great point because when you listen to us, we put you to sleep anyway.
yeah,
So
exactly.
it's super relaxing. Yeah.
Anything that you can do where you can check out mentally. And there's another wife reference in there. Anyway, so I think that's it. I think it's just getting away. A lot of great ideas come after you take a nap or go to bed not understanding what the problem is, and oftentimes I'll wake up with the solution. That happens to me a lot, where I just say, I'm not going to try to think about it. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm not going to try to solve the problem. I'm stepping away from it. I'm hitting my head against a brick wall. So essentially, developing grit is developing your ability to walk away from trying to solve a problem and giving your subconscious a chance to help you solve it.
Well, and you hit it again, which is this is of the research that's available here. This one is the most kind of more, I guess, woo woo is probably the right word, which is you need to develop some self compassion. And in those moments, taking a nap or going on a walk or going to bed, right? Like the worst advice anybody gives people is never go to bed angry with your wife. That's a terrible piece of advice. Go to bed angry and wake up when you're feeling better. And then have a conversation when you're rational. It's the same idea. Just have a little bit of compassion. Listen to what you're actually needing in that moment. And Anthony, when you're saying in that moment of stress, you just dive in and try to solve problems, that's oftentimes counterproductive. You're not actually solving the real problem.
It almost always is.
Yeah.
It almost always is.
Yeah. So Anthony, we've gotten some good stuff out of this. Let's just hit this one more topic, which is, I don't know that we're going to be able to answer this today because it's probably an entire book, not just an episode. But how do you think, and you've developed experience and wisdom down through the years, about when do you need grit and when do you need to consider that this is not the problem that needs to be solved or that you're not solving it the right way? And that's that pivot moment. So you're in the valley of death and you're experiencing this incredible amounts of pain and hardship and you're plowing through, but you take a moment and are reflective. What are some of the frameworks that we can use to help understand that decision process?
This is the impossible question. I call this the only question I don't have an answer for.
I'm glad that you got a question for everything else.
I got an answer for. I have an opinion on everything.
Oh God, friends, please send your hard questions to Anthony. He's going to answer everything.
Chris, you ask me a question about something I don't know about, and I'll craft an answer. This one, I don't got anything. The truth is, this is such a person. Like, when do you quit? Is the ultimate and this probably, you're right, deserves its own podcast episode. I don't know. I don't know how to give that advice. The answer usually is, I mean, if you look at an athlete, the answer is usually, so I can't remember who said this, but they were asking, when are you going to quit? And I think it was either coaching or a comic or somebody was talking about this. And they said, well, there will be a point where it's obvious when I'm over, when it's done for me, when I can't do the job. And then 2 years after that is when I'm going to quit.
Right. Yeah.
That is the best answer I can come up with is for founders. It's like Elon Musk should have never started SpaceX. Ford should have never started the Ford Motor Company. He was competing against the horse and buggy. It's obvious now, but back then, the famous Ford quote is, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. He was up against impossible odds. The Xerox machine, the opening story, great. Like, why do I need this thing? And if he had listened to his internal, like, you should quit, if any of those folks, we wouldn't have Starlink, we wouldn't have cars, we wouldn't have the ability to make copies of our butt. Like, those three things.
Which is really the prime purpose.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's such a personal question. And it's contrary to everything that we're talking about, because we say in order to win, you have to have grit, but also that grit can be the thing that totally destructs your entire life if you take it too far. So when do you quit? I don't know. I don't know.
It's the last piece of advice I have written down, which is to find a group of people that will be honest with you and find a support network as well. The part of the traditional thing is to write down a plan before you start and be like, hey, here are my break points. But the reality is we're crappy at staying to those plans anyway because we're delusional and we think we'll be successful. Like, oh, if I blow through my first $10,000 and we don't have anything, I should quit. But then you convince yourself you can. So surround yourself with people.
So if you talk, here's the problem. If you talk to founders with bad ideas, so just a note, we're trying to eliminate profanity in our.
I already screwed it up for this episode, but I'm glad you screwed it up too. So it's not just me. Well done.
So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's your professionalism that I respect.
We're really trying to eliminate profanity, so we don't have to click the explicit check mark and to open it up to a wider audience. But if you talk to two founders, one has a great idea and one has a bad idea. They both have the same level of grit. But how do you but the good idea, he's being told that he shouldn't, or he or she is being told, don't do it. Your entrepreneurship is terrible. And the person with the bad idea is being told, don't do it. How do you decide whether or not their idea is going to make it or not?
Well, I mean, I thought Uber was a terrible idea.
I mean, it really comes down to, you see the same personality traits with people that are gritty, that have terrible business ideas and have great business ideas. There's no difference. And when you're in it, you have this cognitive dissonance that your idea is going to make it. And who's to tell you you're wrong?
Again, Airbnb, like there's a laundry list of things I thought were terrible ideas. Anthony, quick speed round and then take us to how to.
Okay.
So nature versus nurture. Where does the most grit come from?
Nurture. Yeah, nurturing it. It is absolutely a skill, a craft that you can be taught.
Okay. Is being gritty the same as being stubborn, or is there a difference?
It's the same.
Same thing. Yeah, I agree. It's being obstinate. It's the same word. Does grit lead to burnout or success?
Yes.
I think it's both as well. All right, Anthony, give us our how-tos and get us out of here.
All right. So the how-to. So obviously, reflect on your personal core values and the reason why you're doing it. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why can live to bear almost any how."
I mean, we're quoting Nietzsche now. Like, this is getting to be my sort of podcast, Anthony. This is great.
I think it's pronounced Nietzsche. All right. Create long-term goals to anchor your efforts, your short-term efforts, and make sure short-term. It'll make those short-term efforts less impactful. Adopt a failure is feedback mindset. So you have micro failures that are giving you feedback on how to constantly improve. So having this attitude that you're going to fail a lot will help you develop that grit. Kind of expecting it, setting the expectation that things are going to go sideways. Build a resilience routine, meditation, journaling, physical exercise, sleeping, taking naps, meditating, something that helps you break away from the tactical routine and getting into, like, how do you develop that resilience and core mindset. Celebrate the small wins to maintain that momentum. Surround yourself. We didn't talk about this a lot, but surround yourself with gritty people. People will inspire you and push you. Do not listen to our podcast anymore, because we're the anti-gritty. Regularly revisit your why. Do that all the time. Why am I doing this? What's my purpose? And finally, try to limit your distractions. So one of the things that is going to hurt you is if your meditation is watching Netflix or watching a television show or doom scrolling. Those distractions will pull you away from your why and pull you away from grit. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, it'd make you sad. No, it's cognitive reframing, self-compassion, surrounding yourself with a group of people that will tell you the truth. and mindful pauses in the moment, all critically important. Deep dives, Anthony, a couple really good books in here. Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance by Angela Duckworth. Really, really great book. The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, which is a really terrific book. And there's a great article, The Science of Perseverance by the Harvard Business Review. As always, I get an academic article in there. Anthony, really interesting episode. Go out, be gritty, but not too gritty. Quit when the universe is telling you stuff. What do we got coming up? Yeah.
So next episode, we have a guest, Tim Brynan, and we're going to talk about the art of the launch. So I'm looking forward to that. And just a reminder, show note, remember to follow us. Go to howtofounder.com where you'll find how to subscribe to us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcast. Come on, guys, come and subscribe to us so you get these valuable insights and stupid dad jokes every 2 to 3 times a week.
You can watch us try not to curse and just see our.
If once we hit 100 followers, I will personally go try to make a copy of my own ass on my Xerox machine that's sitting right now.
You're scaring people away now, Anthony. Nobody wants to see that. It's terrifying.
Oh, come on. People, there's a few. You are weirdos and you should stop watching it. But the rest of you.
That's right.
All right, Chris.
I'll just add one other thing.
Yeah.
As opposed to yelling at you and telling you to do something, just thank you for listening. We enjoy this. It is really incredible to have you. It's way cooler when people actually listen and give us feedback. So thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you guys. All right, thanks, Chris. Talk to you soon.
See ya.